Gary Sankowski first became enamoured with butterflies as a young boy growing up on a cane farm in North Queensland. They've since become his passion and his life. Director of the Royal Botanic Gardens Victoria and Blueprint for Living's very own Tim Entwistle is a plant man, so he's got a certain scepticism about butterflies, but he got talking to Gary about what makes them so special, and also takes a tour of the butterfly enclosure of the Melbourne Zoo with keeper Kate Pearce.
Butterflies are a mixed blessing for plants. Caterpillars munch through their leaves, but the flying stage pollinates the flowers. Now, I'm talking today with Gary Sankowski, who's a butterfly enthusiast and author of a very pretty and informative book on butterflies. Welcome, Gary.
Good morning.
Now, there's about 20,000 different species of butterfly in the world today. It's a huge topic to cover in a few minutes of radio. But I gather from your book all about the butterflies, or all about butterflies of Australia, that things are a bit easier here in this country. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. We've only got about 400 species in Australia, which is a bit unusual for a country with tropical rainforest.
Yeah, so why is that? I mean, we think of the tropics as being full of plants and animals and insects, but you're saying we're actually quite poor in butterflies.
Yes, during the last ice age, most of our rainforest was exterminated and shrunk back to tiny little pockets, and everything we've got now just sort of hung on by their fingernails.
Now, look, butterflies, I mean, they're a beautiful thing, and I can see why anyone would be attracted to them, but what got you into butterflies?
Ever since I was a little child, I used to be fascinated with them. I used to pick them up with my fingers and, walk around looking at them, and just always been interested.
So not everyone who gets a butterfly on their finger becomes obsessed like you obviously have. It's not your day job, is that right?
No, that's right. We opened the first butterfly farm at Mount Tamarine in the early 70s and had that there for 10 years as a tourist attraction.
Hello, I'm Kate Pearce, the invertebrate specialist keeper at Melbourne Zoo.
And we're here in the zoo in a very warm, sort of steamy part of the zoo inside the butterfly house with lots of butterflies around us today, lots of colour, lots of movement. And these are butterflies, though, from presumably more tropical areas.
Yeah, they're more from Queensland, Northern Territory and the top of New South Wales. We will get the odd species down here in Victoria, but it's quite rare.
Now, the butterflies we're seeing now are obviously the mature butterfly flying around, and there's a lot more to it. So are there caterpillars hiding behind the scenes here?
Yeah, there certainly are. We release around 22,000 a year into the house. So that means that we're also looking after thousands of caterpillars at any one time. So when you come into the butterfly house, you'll see pot plants on black stands. Those are all the food plants for the caterpillars. So the butterflies have their own specific food plants. We do have some in here that will lay on the same ones, but generally each species has its own one. So they know which is their own plant. They are able to chemically feel that with their feet. They call it tasting with their feet. So they will lay on those plants. So once a week, each day has its own food plant. We swap that over, we take it out the back, and depending on what's going on within the butterfly house, numbers-wise, we decide how many we're going to keep for that week.
Well, where do you get your plants from for this collection?
A lot of these have been in here for a very long time. So the figs have probably been in here around 20-odd years. Some of the other ones, the smaller cat's whiskers, which do have flowers on them for the butterflies to feed on, we propagate them ourselves at the nursery. And if we are after host plants to top up our genetic diversity, because we do propagate a lot down at the nursery, we need to top that up as well and make sure we've got really robust plants. We'll contact Gary Sankowski up in Queensland.
So there's a lot of plants in here, and what you're saying is that there's special food plants in those pots, but these there's a few palms and some big leaf tropical plants in here. They're not for the caterpillars to eat?
No. If we had plants in the ground that the caterpillars would eat, they would eat them, and there would be no plants for you to see in here. So we do pick different plants within the house as roosting plants. So butterflies are inactive at night. It's not sleep like we sleep. They're generally active or they're inactive. They know when it's bedtime, so around 4:30 they'll start roosting.
Now, the zoo's very strong on conservation. I know that's a lot of the education programs running through the Melbourne Zoo are around that. Are there threats to butterflies that you would tell visitors to come to the collection?
There certainly is. It's habitat loss is a big one, and also the use of pesticides. We all want to keep our gardens looking beautiful, but unfortunately bug sprays, things like that, they're all going to affect affect numbers of invertebrates out there. Also, people's gardens, if you can plant flowering plants or even go that one step further and look for caterpillar-friendly plants, that will help our local native species.
Is it the same, do you think it's the same flowers for bees and butterflies or not?
We tend to find that bees really like purple a lot more in temperate areas, whereas the butterflies will like yellows and whites and pinks and things like that. But really...
Is this a fashion statement, or are their eyes set up differently?
It's probably more to do with attraction. So butterflies like this one here, this caper white, which, as it sounds, is white, they like white flowers because they're white. They tend to be attracted to the colours that they are. Why bees like purple, I'm not sure. They just...
Why does anyone like purple, really?
I have a purple-loving 5-year-old boy at home, Tim Entwistle, who would take issue with that. We're going to hear more from Kate Pearce at Melbourne Zoo in just a minute on Blueprint for Living as our resident botanical boffin Tim Entwistle peeks into the chrysalis.
Gary, the intriguing thing, I suppose, with butterflies is that you get more than that pretty butterfly. You get that caterpillar, the ones that I mentioned, that munch the leaves too. Maybe just run through the life cycle a bit and what they do at each stage. So they start by eating the plants, is that right?
Yeah, well, they have a 4-stage life cycle. The female, of course, lays an egg, and caterpillar chews his way out of there. Most butterflies need very soft new growth for the little tiny caterpillars to start off, and some butterflies even lay their eggs well off the host plant, especially on vines, and that poor little caterpillar has to find the plant, and obviously some of them fail. They chomp the leaves, and they go through about 5 or 6 changes of skin called instars. Then they finally make their chrysalis, and that's where the huge transformation takes place. All the cells that were the caterpillar break down to liquid, and then they just slowly form. The parts of the butterfly just slowly form. It's absolutely amazing, really. There's nothing else really like it, as you can imagine, really.
How long does the actual butterfly flying stage live?
It varies enormously. If you're talking about the summertime, it'd be approximately 4 to 6 weeks on average, but some species can live up to 12 months. And a lot of butterflies spend the whole winter and dry season as adults, so in that time they live 6 to 9 months as well.
Oh, right. So things like bees and flies have much, much shorter times than that, don't they?
Yeah, that's right. The main problem is they're the same as bees and flies, though their wings have no living tissue. So once they've worn out, then that's the end of them then. But they fly carefully, and if they're spending the winter somewhere, they just fly a few days every now and again to have something to eat and then rest the rest of the time.
And so the butterflies that you have in here are very big, very colourful, and I can see a couple that I recognise. There's one that's that big green one. Now, is that a rare one, or is that a common tropical one?
Yeah, the Cairns birdwing is reasonably rare. It's only found around Cairns, and it is a protected species in Queensland.
Okay. Any other protected species here, as we have one of those lovely green ones sort of hover around us?
Yeah, the Ulysses, which is the big blue one that you'll sometimes see flitting through the gully area, that is also a protected species in Queensland. So you need permits to move those between states and within Queensland itself.
Now, the Ulysses blue is one that I have seen on Dunk Island, and they fly in a very, very weird, distinctive way. They almost seem more like a bird the way they flew. Yeah,
they flash the blue as they fly around plants or down riverbeds. They tend to be very territorial as well. So that's the males often saying, "Get out of my patch, this is where I am, I'm chasing the girls around here."
Right. At the moment they're chasing a few kids who've just come in around as well.
There's a purple one down there. Look pretty.
My absolute favourite butterfly is the Ulysses swallowtail. What would be your favourite?
So mine is the red lacewing. It's a strictly tropical East Coast one. It's bright red on a black background. Absolutely spectacular thing. Most butterflies that have brilliant colours have to use evasive flight patterns all the time just so predators can't catch them. I think that's the main reason.
So if your pretty things are after you, okay, all right. Now that makes complete sense. Well, look, thank you very much, Gary Sankowski, who's a butterfly enthusiast and has put out this very beautiful book. It's called All About Butterflies of Australia. Thank you very much for chatting to us on Blueprint for Living today.
Thank you.
That was Tim Entwistle talking all things lepidoptery with author and enthusiast Gary Sankowski and Melbourne Zoo's butterfly keeper Kate Pearce.